Welcome to Live Well with Juniper. I'm your host, Rachel Bremness. Juniper is a program of Trellis and all about optimizing health as we age. Here we talk about all things wellness and aging in Minnesota. Each week, I'll have guests join me to share wellness expertise, resources, and Juniper behind the scenes info with you. Joining me today is Gail Johnson, and we have a rather somber topic: loneliness and social isolation. According to the World Health Organization, 1 in 6 people worldwide today are lonely. We're going to discuss the issue and some things that can be done to help us feel more connected. Gail has recently celebrated 12 years as an employee of Common Bond Communities, an affordable housing provider in St. Paul, Minnesota. As the Health and Wellness Manager for Common Bond, her role includes providing evidence-based health and wellness programming, as well as CPR and first aid training. In September 2022, Gail founded Renaissance Mind and Body with a plan to provide evening and weekend classes, honor speaking engagements, and share her love for storytelling through publishing children's books. Gail is an alumni of the Michigan State University and St. Catherine University. Her diverse education and service experience has led her to earn credentials as a health and wellness coach, an American Red Cross first aid and CPR instructor, a fall prevention specialist, a group fitness instructor, and a certification as an occupational therapy practitioner. In 2006, Silver Sneakers honored Gail as Minnesota's Instructor of the Year. Having taught a variety of classes for seniors, adults, children, and physically challenged over the last 20 years, Gail particularly enjoys kickboxing and senior-friendly fitness options. Gail is passionate about empowering people with information to maintain, regain, and begin building healthy lifestyles. She believes it's never too late. Welcome, Gail.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
We are so glad to have you. You have such a decorated intro and bio, so much history in it. I feel like I've known you for 7 years, but there's still things I learn every year that I've known you. Is there anything else that we should know about you, especially as we lean into this topic today around loneliness and social isolation?
Well, I think I am nothing without my family. So when I talk about the things that I've accomplished, they've been all right along with me on the path of the challenges and the ups and downs that go along with it. So my husband, my children, and my now grandchild, and I even have a dog that is emotional support animal, as a matter of fact. So Willow is also very important to me.
Yes. And I've met that dog, and they are so sweet. Oh, I've met your whole family, and they're all lovely, but it's always the dogs that we get the most excited about. I don't know why that is.
Well, Willow's pretty special.
Yes, yes. And the topic of social isolation and loneliness, specifically among older adults, has been coming up quite a bit and more in recent years. What are social isolation and loneliness, and why do we care about them so much?
Well, social isolation happens kind of, over time. If we're finding ourselves more alone, spending time alone for different reasons. Sometimes it's due to illness, sometimes it's due to passing away of loved ones that we've been close to. Those circles just becoming smaller and less accommodating for us to have others to lean on. um, we talk about that loneliness piece. I mean, you can be in a crowd and be lonely.
Mhm.
So I think it really matters where the head is, where what your thinking is like. I always tell people it matters what you're thinking. So it's important. I try to keep the positivity going with lots of positive conversation and words of encouragement, things like that around me. I will post words in a minute. Um, but it's important because what we're talking about is what we're thinking about.
Yeah, that's so true. And that's something I've heard before as far as what that inner dialogue that or self-talk some people have called it that we might not even realize that we're having can make us feel lonely. And then social isolation. I remember my grandfather speaking about that because he was the last one in his generation in the family. He lived to be the oldest, and so he didn't have any siblings or cousins remaining, and how lonely that was. Although he had a whole herd of children and grandchildren to connect with, still feeling isolated. And I know that this is a big concern because there have been some adverse health effects that have been found to be related to loneliness and isolation.
Absolutely. And, the escalation of different health concerns, I mean, everything from how you manage taking care of yourself, your nutrition, and how you decide to spend your time, your days, where you get the input from other people, whether it's just always at the doctor's office or do you attend churches and other functions? But having a full life means that we're communicating with other people. We were never meant to be people in isolation,
Mhm.
to live alone. We're supposed to be among others, and we should be feeding off of others and helping others as we do that.
Definitely. And I know that studies have found that people who are more experience more loneliness and social isolation. They've been found to experience higher risks for high blood pressure, heart disease, obesity, weakened immune function, anxiety or depression, and dementia. Those are all serious conditions that we would like to all avoid and stay healthy and well.
Absolutely. Those conditions you speak of are ones that get exacerbated when we talk about being in isolation. I
Mhm.
mean, you take something specifically like high blood pressure. Well, blood pressure is one of those mood kind of things, it fluctuates depending upon what you're experiencing in life, right? So you can go into a situation and not know that it's really being affected, but in fact, internally, it is. So it requires being monitored. It requires our attention, and it requires that we are also thinking about what we're putting inside of our bodies and what we're allowing to go inside of our thoughts as well.
Mhm. What are some of the factors that might put someone at greater risk for social isolation or loneliness?
Again, it's life circumstances sometimes.
Hmm.
Things that we can't avoid. I don't think anybody ever chooses to be isolated. I
Yeah.
think it kind of falls on us.
Hmm.
Um, Whether it's because we lose a loved one and we don't know how to talk to others about it. And losing a loved one doesn't mean just we're talking about humans. We're also talking about pets.
Yep.
Sometimes lose the loss of a pet can be really, really traumatic, and it can be life changing, life altering, right? And how we adjust to change makes a difference. And I can't say that and talk about that enough. I think if there's a way for you to learn to embrace change, I think it's doable. We should do it
Hmm.
because change is going to happen.
Yeah.
Whether we think about it being a change as small as our bank accounts fluctuating,
Hmm.
because you got to go buy food, you got to go pay for the meds, whatever the issues might be, bank accounts change. When we think about just day-to-day things, our neighbors change when
True.
people move away, when people downsize, we start to have to live among a different set of people. And, also that brings with us new circumstances to balance and deal with. May not be akin to what we are accustomed to or things that we necessarily like,
Hmm.
but we have to learn to live together. And so accommodating others and allowing others to be forgiving of us as well. We all need a little grace sometimes.
We do. And then in remembering, I love that example of the neighbors, right? Because when the neighbors move away, remembering to stay connected with those neighbors and remembering to make an effort to get to know the new neighbors because they're going to be the ones that we ask to pick up our mail when we're maybe away for the weekend or keep an eye on things for us if we're on vacation and we hope to help them in return and they're right next door so that's people that you'll see all summer long when you're out for walks or out gardening, and great relationships to invest in.
Absolutely. Um, we can't live by ourselves. And the thing to remember is if we're not neighborly, if we're not getting to at least be friendly with our neighbors, that we can feel comfortable speaking to them, um, will create a loss. It will create kind of a closet feeling, right? If you
Hmm.
feel like you're only going to go outside if you don't see anybody out there because you're peeking to make sure, no one's there to see you step outside, that's a problem.
Hmm.
And, it may not be that you even noticed yourself doing it, but when you do see it, it's been called out, know that. Well, goodness, maybe I just need to step out when I do see them out there and purposefully go say hi. Because if we're shying away because we think they may not care for us or they may not like us, or maybe we've heard somebody else say something that we thought wasn't so nice, um, we should get to know them on our own terms, not based upon what someone else has said.
Yes, definitely. And I just sitting here thinking about my own personal experience because I grew up in the country in rural Minnesota. On My parents had a small farm, so we didn't really have any neighbors. My parents had to drive me anytime I wanted to see a friend. Whereas my husband, he grew up in the cities in a neighborhood, and was one of those kids who'd come home from school and he'd be out playing until sunset and then come home for dinner. And so as we've moved into our home now in the St. Paul suburbs, it's been harder for me. I've had to learn how to be neighborly in my 20s and 30s because it wasn't a skill that I learned growing up. And it has been a little uncomfortable, but how I have to keep reminding myself to put myself out there and try to make those connections, and it's all been worth it. It's been such an enriching experience. Whereas my husband, he can just talk to anybody about anything. So he hasn't had to try so hard.
Right, right. Well, I've had kind of a different situation because I've had the opportunity to move around in my
Yes.
adult life. So I've lived in a few different states, and so I've had to make my way. I've had to find my way because I didn't have family nearby in those locations, and so it meant that I had to go find some place. And for me, because of my upbringing and my background, I chose to go through the church to start.
Hmm.
That I could use the church because it was supposed to be the welcoming place that I could at least start myself off feeling that I can at least walk in there and say hi to somebody and they'll speak
Yes.
back.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was my way of navigating those what could be social situations of feeling isolated. But then gravitating and moving that into communities was different depending upon where I was because before I had children, in the first community I moved to at the time back in Pennsylvania, I did not have children and there were children in the neighborhood, but I didn't really have a connection to them because
Hmm.
I didn't have kids at the time. I had a rabbit though. And my rabbit was my key to get them to talk to me.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. So I offer that to say maybe it's your pet. If it's not a child that helps
Mhm.
connect you, maybe it's a pet. And even now, as my children are becoming, almost all of them are adults now, but I've got one that's a teenager. He thinks he's an adult. So I think that but having my dog and her change of wardrobe, it draws attention. So we still have friends because she draws attention where I may not always.
Yes, I've heard other people say that too, that just by walking their dog, they've gotten to know their neighbors so much better because people will comment on how lovely their dog is, and then they'll reply, "Thank you so much. And what's your name?" And then just start up a conversation to get to know somebody on their block.
I think the funniest thing when I first adopted Willow 3 years ago, I adopted her from a shelter. Um, I was walking her, and because people love I mean, she's a black doodle with some white markings,
Hmm.
and she walks really tall. And my neighbor said, wait a minute, when he saw me coming, and this neighbor has never spoken to me. Oh my goodness, he was really anxious about telling me, wait a minute, wait a minute. He went inside his house and got some whipped cream to bring to Willow. I was amazed. I'm like, where's my coffee or my tea? But he wanted to give this whipped cream to Willow.
That is
So
so sweet.
yeah.
And great use of whipped cream. Did Willow like it?
Oh, of course.
That's fantastic. Yes. And I know there's some things that can cause isolation that are kind of outside people's control. So loss of mobility. Maybe we aren't able to walk anymore in the way that we used to. Maybe we've had an injury that prevents us from being able to move. Hearing problems can also be a factor for people and make it really difficult to engage socially when you can't hear well. Living alone and lack of transportation can be also contribute quite a bit to isolation. So those just want to acknowledge that there are some things that are outside of the individual control that might just happen to people kind of unexpectedly.
Yeah.
Um, there's still things we can do to make sure we're connected. Um, but yeah, sometimes things just happen.
Absolutely. And that takes me back to that topic of change. You know, the other kinds of changes that you mentioned that happen in life, whether it's diminished vision or diminished ability to mobility, because we need to learn how to adapt and do things differently. It also means that we need to allow ourselves to expand our circles
Mhm.
so that we can get the help that we need, because that also will allow us to have a greater quality of life as well. Our quality of life also depends on us reaching out and getting the services that we need, in order to make sure that we are always going to be doing the best that we can for the circumstances that exist.
So, what are things that people can do to help stay connected? As someone who's worked with older adults for 12 plus years, Gail, what are things that you've seen people do that have been beneficial?
Well, definitely, look for those kinds of connectivity groups, um, doing the things that you know are both whether important to you or beneficial to you. So that means, maybe there are some learning opportunities, keeping your brain sharp by learning some new activities, whether it's a class at the library or a class at the senior center, taking up some new hobby or learning to do something different, both good for your brain and good for engaging with others. And learning some new tricks of the trade if indeed you need to be able to adapt as time changes. Maybe arthritis is causing hands not to be able to be as functional as you would desire. But certainly, we can always adapt and look for those adaptations that are available to us. If our hearing is, we're experiencing hearing loss, we're not hearing people well, we're not being able to connect over the phone, even. We want to go get that checked out because our balance also begins in the inner ear. And that
Mhm.
means we want to get that checked out and not have that be a fall hazard as well. So one loss can also attribute to other losses. And so let's not let things go unchecked or undetected and make sure that we're staying as healthy as we can.
Oh, definitely. And it can be sometimes I think it's a very natural thing to feel a little bit nervous about putting ourselves out there to by starting up a new hobby or joining a new group, whether it's a faith community or fitness class, a social group, what have you. But I think it's important for all of us to remember that other people in that group were new at one time too,
Absolutely.
and that those groups are going to be really excited to have us there to
Mhm.
participate.
And if you were a reader, for example, maybe if vision has been diminished, we want to find those audio copies of those books. We can listen to them and still
Mhm.
go and participate in those groups. We just have to learn to adapt. There are ways to do that. And if we put forth a little effort to be able to do it, I think that we'll find people will embrace us for it.
Yes.
They'll want to know, well, goodness, well, how did you learn to do that? I think I was pretty surprised recently as I had a speaking engagement over in St. Paul. And oh my goodness, a lady came up to me. She was purposefully there early. And as I was adjusting my microphone and getting things set up, she says, I need you to put this on. And before you get started, just push the on button. And that way I'll be able to hear you. And it was connected to
Perfect.
her hearing aid. And we did just as she instructed, and it allowed her to be a part of that group in a way that she wouldn't normally have been able to. So I applauded her for taking the initiative to learn how to use that piece of equipment so that she could still attend events and be able to enjoy them.
What a wonderful example. Yeah, sometimes it just takes a little asking, and then people are very glad to help.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there are so many things we can still engage in, and that means, just because you go to the fitness center or the community center, the senior center, there are multiple things going on in those places. So it's not always just one particular activity that you might always associate with that particular place.
Mhm.
It would be wise to just check it out and see what else is going on, even at the library.
Definitely. Yes. I think when we're working, we get a lot of social engagement at work. And then once we retire, we just have to be a little bit more intentional about where am I going to connect with people during the week? And the nice thing about that is we get to make sure that the way that we are connecting is in ways that we enjoy. So
Absolutely. You still have the choice. You still have options. You can still decide, okay, I don't want to go back and do that again. um, and that's okay.
Mhm.
But the thing is that we step out and try. And sometimes trying does mean that we're going to go at least two or three times before we push it aside. Because the first time you're just learning the lingo or
Yep.
learning maybe the biggest challenge was getting there.
Uh-huh.
you know, maybe we had to learn to navigate some kind of transportation in order to get there if we couldn't drive ourselves.
Mhm.
But know that there are those options out there, whether we choose it to be public or private. We can get to where we want to be, and we can also learn about other options that are open once we're there, whether it's if there's inclement weather, maybe the group doesn't meet in person, maybe they meet online.
Mhm.
So we can still keep things going and we can still navigate new opportunities and keep our brains engaged. If I can speak about nothing else, I think that's the most important benefit of us staying connected to other people and not allowing that social isolation to overtake us.
Definitely. And I think you brought up a good point too about virtual engagement opportunities and how that can be a learning curve as well. I remember my dad wanted to start volunteering for a group and the training was online, so he had to figure out Zoom. He hadn't figured out Zoom before, but he learned it and now he can do it just fine and he can use it for any other activity that he might want to do virtually. So it's a skill that will carry forward for him.
Absolutely. And even learning to navigate the computer world is not something we have to do by ourselves. There are classes, there are plenty of companies. And just because we go and ask a question doesn't always mean someone's going to charge us for it. You can go in the library and ask questions.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, some of those answers we need are right there, or we can be guided to where to find the answers. And there can be a tutorial that we just have to sit and listen to.
Yes, definitely. So now you've been leading classes for a long time. How have you seen Juniper classes help people stay connected?
Wow, in lots of places and lots of ways. There have been classes that we would not normally do on a on cycle. Like for example, our sail classes and our Tai Chi Quan classes, we kind of keep those going more routine. But maybe a with ease class is not something that we do so frequently. But when we do a class, usually that class becomes so cohesive in wanting to support one another that they become a class in their own. I've had classes that continued to walk after our sessions were complete. And we've maybe just checked in and to see how people are doing. But they've been motivated to keep going on their own. I just got a message actually yesterday from someone who said, you know, Gail, I know that I didn't get all the reading done when we were doing that Living Well with Chronic Pain class, but I wanted to let you know I just finished two of those chapters and I started doing my pain profile and all of these different things. She says, and I just wish I could have shared it with the rest of the group. And I said right away, I said, well, if you would like to start the group, I said, I will connect you. So you just
Hmm.
have to let me know. And I have done that for many folks. I have been able to reconnect them to some of their groups so that they can continue to be the advocates for each other,
Hmm.
sharing both information and support. Because sometimes, you know, when we make those action plans that we talk about, you know, we want accountability.
Yeah.
That's a piece of it, right? And so, in order to have that accountability, you also don't want to tell somebody who may be too close to you who might nag you about it. We don't want to be nagged either, right? So let's think about, you know, who can we talk to who would understand our position
Hmm.
in making the action plan and wanting to support us on whether we partially complete it or we complete it. Whatever the situation might be, we just need a little support sometimes. And sometimes that means people reach back out to me, but sometimes it's that they want to talk to some of their other class members.
Hmm. Definitely. We call those accountability buddies. Yes,
I
they
like that.
they keep you accountable in a friendly way. Yes.
Right, right.
And Gail, I've heard some participants say that maybe they joined a class, but it seemed like everyone else really knew each other really well. Maybe it was a sail class or a Tai Chi class that's been going for a while, and the rest of the group seemed to know each other really well, and this person felt a little left out as a new person. What would be your recommendation as a leader to those people to start to feel part of the group? What would be some things you'd recommend they do?
Well, definitely. I know that to be very true because I've had many folks who've just continued to come to class because they love it and it's a part of their routine now. But you know, we all have to step in and be that new kid on the block sometimes, right? And in order to do that, we can think about some ways to get ourselves to be a part of the group. And one of the best ways is to show up early, not wait until it's time to be right in there to get started. Come a little early, whether that's an in person class or an online class. Join a little early. Be a part of the conversation that's taken part ahead of time. Talk to your instructor. Be that person with a question, and no question is too big or too small. All of them are important. It matters what kind of shoes you wear. It matters what kind of clothing you wear. So if you want to talk about those things, talk about them. It matters. There's nothing too small or too big to have that conversation. And for myself, I know if you ask me a question that I don't have an answer to, I'm going to go figure it out. And then I'm going to come back and talk to the group about it because if you asked it, somebody else is thinking it as well.
Hmm.
So don't think that you're the only one. It just needs to be brought up so we can talk about it.
Hmm. Definitely. Yes. And to wrap us up today, Gail, I always like to ask our guests, what is the best piece of wellness advice or a really good one that you've received that our listeners should know?
I think it's really important to remember that no matter where you are in life, it's never too late to do something different. It's never too late to embrace change. And it's never too late to do something to change how you feel about yourself. And that positivity that you can draw for yourself, make it happen.
Mm-hmm. That's such good advice. I think the people who abide by that, you just see them thriving. Yes, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Gail. Thank you for joining us today and for all of your insights. You can find Gail's classes and others at yourjuniper.org. Gail, are there other ways that people can stay in touch with you?
Well, you're welcome to always send me an email, renaissancemindandbody@gmail.com. And that phone number, you have it, I
I
think.
do have your phone number. It is 612-568-7757.
I'm going to have to learn that so I can call myself.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm Rachel Bremness, and you've been listening to Live Well with Juniper. Like this podcast? Support us with a donation at yourjuniper.org. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and don't forget to share with friends. Until next time, be well.